It's like you brought a prop today.
I did. I figured we're talking rotoscope. I can actually bring one of the pieces out and show it off a little bit.
On the Place for History, we're going back in time to what some people thought might be the future of motion pictures. Katie Seal with the State Historical Society of Missouri is with us today to talk about the rotoscope. And maybe before we go into the actual device, we'll talk about the man behind the device first, Katie.
Yeah, sure. So there was actually two guys here in the Rolla area. One of them was Roe Carney. Carney is a very well-known name in the Phelps County area. And then Tom Smith was kind of his cohort in tinkering and creating this. Roe was born and raised here in Phelps County. He actually comes from a line of theater owners. His dad owned a number of theaters throughout the area in Rolla, St. James, Lebanon, and Roe managed them for him on several occasions. They also have a connection to Springfield. They owned one of the hotels there in downtown, and Roe and his wife managed the hotel there for a while before coming back up to manage the theaters. They owned the Tiger Hotel up in Columbia, the Pennant Hotel, both in the Carney family, both in Rolla and Columbia as well. So quite the business family. Always looking for new avenues, new creative ways to do things. So it was very much a family trait. And then his co inventor Tom Smith is originally from the Kansas City area, but as a young kid moved down towards Humansville. And there he worked in theaters, was kind of a projectionist down there, and then actually had a series of kind of inventions himself, more in regards to drive-in theaters. Both he and Roe served during World War II. Roe got a little bit more projection experience, so he was actually a projectionist during World War II and ran all of the films and the stuff for the war bonds that were shown to soldiers during at that time. One of the really cool things that Tom Smith did just before they got into the rotoscope was in Urbana, Missouri, so just there north of Springfield on 65. He did a drive-in theater. It later gets kind of the name of Autoscope, and he had a single projector with a circle of screens around it, so the cars could drive up to their own screen, and the film would be projected all the way around in this circle. And they'd have, their individual speaker box, and then their individual, really decent sized screens, probably what we would think of as like a big screen TV today, but your own individual screen for your car. And he could fit up to 320 cars is what he got in that drive-in theater there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that particular.
No, it was pretty short-lived. There in Urbana, he did go on to build another larger one out in, I believe, Albuquerque, somewhere in New Mexico, and built an even larger scope. And there's kind of a few more articles and magazine articles and stuff on that. So both of these guys together with their theater projection and also kind of inventing came together for a very good partnership on this project.
So where did they get the idea for the rotoscope?
So a lot of this dates to in 1953. Roe Carney actually goes to New York City for one of the premieres of Cinerama. So Cinerama is a giant curved screen movie, but they used three cameras and then three projectors to shoot this kind of 180-degree view. And Rose saw that and thought, we can improve on that. We can make it more, because it was pretty cumbersome. Like, you have to have all of the equipment, you have to have a specialized theater to show this in. And, it's not necessarily practical to mainstream that, to actually have that across the country. So he wanted to be more efficient. What film director is actually going to want to set up three cameras for every single scene, right? So he's like, I think we can do that with a single camera and then with a single projector to then be able to project, because what movie theater is going to be large enough to allow for the layout and the setup of this. And they managed to do it.
So that's what's sitting next to you. If people
Yes.
have been watching, wondering, what is that?
Yes. So this is the projector attachment. So all of these lenses and mirrors would kind of move, and it would align all of the scenes from each individual film strip. So the projector would sit back here behind it and then shine through on it. And then they also had an attachment that went in front of the camera that then got that 180-degree view, again, using a series of cameras and lenses, or mirrors and lenses.
So I'm picturing the experience of watching this kind of like an IMAX theater, or maybe the Sphere out in Las Vegas, where it kind of
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
all the way. Yeah. Yeah. Is that what this was like at the time?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. We've got some images of the screen. They essentially had to retrofit the theater. They showed it a couple times here in Rolla. I believe they had a showing down in Springfield as well, and then in St. James, where they essentially had to, refit the theater because they had a giant curved screen, and you could sit down, in and be surrounded by the screen just a little bit. And they did have some reports of people with a little bit of nausea or motion sickness with a few of the scenes that they had, because you're essentially immersed in kind of, it was very kind of new for its time, being that kind of immersive extra experience in a theater world.
So, in reading about this, I read that he attached the cameras,
Mhm.
more than one, to his car and
Yes.
then drove around with this.
Yes.
That
So
must have been a sight.
it was, and thankfully, 1950s, 1960s era car, very long hoods, so that he could fit it all on there, because he's got a 35 millimeter camera, and the projector, the film attachment, is probably good 2-3 feet long, right? So
Um,
very obvious. And then he's got a rig on the front to where it could sit. He had one where, and they tried different things, because this is all, they're all experimenting. So some of it's on the hood of the car, some it appears that it was actually somehow placed in front of the car. So you've got kind of a lower angle of view. They set it on, some sort of carts. They strapped it to the bottom of an airplane at the Vichy Airport, now the Rolla National Airport. So there's actually some of them flying around and then coming in for a landing at the
oh,
airport.
wow.
Um, they had it on roller coaster up in Forest Park in St. Louis. I don't know how they convinced all these people to strap it to all these things. But they really wanted to kind of show the versatility and the amazing scenery and stuff that you could get with this angle, and it really showcases it well, and it's really quite quite amazing.
I'm sure there are some crazy stories out there where things didn't go exactly as planned, or weird things happened while they were driving around with this or flying around with this.
Yes, we actually do have some film footage, which is really great of them. They're kind of driving through the streets of Rolla, and then they get up to what's now the intersection of 63 and it was old 66 at the time, so it's now 44, and really great sceneries at some old Route 66 sites. But they pull onto 66 headed towards St. Louis, and then suddenly they're pulling off to the side of the road, and you see a state trooper, Missouri state trooper, pull in front of them, and they ended up getting pulled over. So I'm still, I've got some feelers out with the state highway patrol to see if there's any information as to what was going on. Do they have any information uh, on that story? But yeah, so they had some interesting incidents like that.
Maybe the trooper curious about what's
Right.
going on here. What is all this?
We have some questions as to what exactly you're doing. And that's another of the really great, like, you kind of get, obviously they're driving around Rolla, so the people of Rolla are kind of like, oh, there they go again. But he does take it up to St. Louis, and we've got a really great scene of them driving up Olive Street. And obviously, they had not seen this contraption strapped to the front of a car. And because you've got the 180 degree, you can see all the people turning just to stare at the car as it goes by, trying to figure out what is going on.
What is happening here?
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you have some of this
Mhm.
film there in your collection. Can people just ask to see it, or how can people see it?
Yeah, so we do. Back in, oh goodness, probably 2017, Ro Carney's son Gene actually had collected all of the remaining artifacts, the film, a lot of the photos and promotional materials. We've got some really great posters from when they were promoting the show and stuff. And he donated those here to the Rolla Research Center. And then a few years after that, we were able to get a National Film Preservation Foundation grant, and we digitized 4 of the reels. I still have several more that I'm looking to have professionally digitized, cleaned and digitized as well. So we do have quite a bit of film footage that people can come check out here in the office. Yeah.
So there is an effort to preserve this and keep it for future generations, although we don't have a theater per se where you can sit down and watch it right now.
Right. Yeah. We're not at that point. I will say the family engineering, continued on through Gene, and he actually rigged it so he could set up kind of a theater in his garage. So a much smaller version of this. So, I have hopes for the future of maybe being able to showcase it on a curved screen in the future. So I'm always trying to work towards that, figure out how I can manage to do that. Yeah.
So it sounds like these two, Roe and his partner, were ahead of their time a bit in the 50s and 60s. Do you think
Yeah,
that's true?
I do. I think they were really trying to think outside of the box of what comes next as far as theater and movie going. And I think they were a bit too far ahead of their time. Maybe you're kind of in the golden age of movies in the 50s and 60s of theater attendance is high, theater owners, because to make this work, I think makes me think of when the IMAX comes in, of like theaters had to completely retrofit one of their theaters, and they had to it would only show rotoscope, right? Without major, reconstruction to put it back. The projector attachment, it couldn't be up at the normal projection height. It actually had to be level with the screen to show
Mm.
straight on. So you had to have like a almost a separate booth down, which would have taken up some of the seats that you had there in the center. And then, of course, the curved screen would have, completely eliminated a regular screen. So it was trying to get buy-in from directors to start, producing films with this technology. So then theaters, would have to follow, or having theaters start with using this technology, and then maybe having the movie producers follow. So they could never quite get traction from either side. A lot of interest. They did big promotional showings, invited people from all across the country within the movie and theater industry, just trying to drum up some attention. And I think they were just a little too ahead of their time, and it was too much of an investment and a risk, I think, at that time for anyone to take them up on it.
So is it remembered fondly? Do people still think of this technology as cool, awesome?
Yeah, I mean, especially for here locally, it's how I found out about it. I had honestly been living here in Rolla 2 or 3 years at that time, and my former coworker, who was the director here in the office, he remembers as a kid, Roe Carney, they would have free showings for like the school children of the area. So they would set it up either in the theater or even outside. They did that at least a few times that people have remembered. And then they would show just the demo reel of, they had all of their test footage. So they kind of spliced that together into this demo reel with some music and a voiceover. And so they would show that to school kids from around the area. And I don't know how many people have mentioned, oh yeah, I remember going to one of these. And so yeah, especially here locally, a lot of people remember getting to see it, live when it was happening.
So if people can't make it to Rolla there, where you have the films, is this out there on the State Historical Society of Missouri website? Can you see it on YouTube, or do you have to make the trip to Rolla to be able to see it? I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get some clips from you to put in
Yeah,
this segment.
yeah. Yeah, so there are a few. So Gene Carney puts a few of the things that he digitized online. It's just small snippets and segments of it, but you can check those out. We will have a fuller presentation of me doing this that has some more clips that people can see. But we can also make this available at our other research centers. So if you're closer to Springfield, we've got our Springfield Research Center. You can view stuff there, or any of our other locations as well.
All right. And we'll have a link to that online. Anything I'm not asking you about this today? It's fascinating that we had this visionary inventor, maybe a little ahead of what's the saying? Ahead of his skis a little
Yeah,
bit at the time.
yeah, maybe a little ahead. So I do have a little bit of a clip that I would love to show that kind of showcases. If I can share screen, if you let me do that, because
Yes.
I worked with the International Federation of Film Archives and the George Eastman Museum to create a entry for a project that they're calling Film Atlas. So it's going to be an encyclopedia of film technology. So anybody that's interested in film technology, this could be a really great resource. But they had an actual Disney engineer. They spliced it together because the really kind of crazy thing is, like, in each um, frame of film, you actually have almost three different scenes. So you've got the bottom scene that is going to be your center view of it, and then the top two pieces of the scene is your right and left. So the kind of crazy mirrors and lenses that realigns it, like it. There's a lot going on here, but it's also kind of simple, all at the same time of how it actually works. I think kind of miraculously. Um,
Oh, there it is.
Here you can see. So this is what it looks like normally. If I were to just project it normally with a normal projector, and then this is what it actually lays out to be
Oh,
when it's on a curved screen. So, of course, this is, flat, but you can kind of get that sense of what it would actually look like a little bit on a curved screen. So this is them at the Mississippi River. This is from the bank, but they did have times when they were actually filming on a barge. So they got out on a boat with it. This is the wooden roller coaster up in Forest Park in St. Louis that I mentioned earlier. So they're strapped to the front of this, and this is one of those scenes that apparently, some people had to kind of stagger out of the theater a little bit. They, got a little motion sensitive on some of these scenes in particular, because they're like, it felt like you truly were, almost on that roller coaster yourself without the movement. So it was a little jarring, but kind of one of their promotion is the thrills, chills, and spills of rotoscope. And this doesn't have the audio, but they did have some audio clips with this whole ride. If there are people on the roller coaster screaming, which I think just adds to the scene as well.
so engineers from Disney helped put this together. Did I hear that right?
Yes, yeah. So they helped me with kind of reconfiguring this for that Film Atlas entry. So there is going to be, this is just a short segment of the film that they have to put together. So there's going to be a longer clip of that, and that website's supposed to go live this summer. So anybody interested in kind of some of that film technology, which is really great because they're highlighting stuff that's still in use today, but then also things like rotoscope that never quite made it out from where they were at. So kind of highlight some little known, or maybe even some very unknown technologies. Here's that scene from St. Louis there on Olive Street that I mentioned. And again, with that 180 view, it's really great because you get like the storefront views. You can kind of see more of what's going on in the stores. You can see the signs for the businesses, which you lose when you're doing just regular motion picture, which is really kind of great.
Right. We saw the guy on the right looking over like, what is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They got quite a few looks here in St. Louis. You can see the lady standing there just kind of staring as he goes by. So, it's the technology, but then there's just these really great, fabulous historic scenes of different locations around Missouri. He takes a drive through the state capitol, so you get to see the Capitol building, the Missouri Supreme Court, the penitentiary during these time periods. Of course, lots of views of Rolla, 'cause that's just where they're at. So here, whew, we're back in Rolla. So as you'll notice, we tilt. This was one of their experiments, was putting it kind of on a gyro, so that as they turned and swerved, the camera would move with them. Which, again, they were just trying to think outside of the box of what all different uses could it have. So I think that's maybe where they missed their mark a little. Of action movies was maybe what they should have pushed harder for. Some of these great car chase scenes or something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to work with. It's a lot of fun to show off. So I always like talking about rotoscope.
And I'm sure you'll share with me the website when it's available.
Absolutely.
And where people can find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Katie, thank you very much for this. It's been fascinating to talk about this.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. I always love a chance to talk about rotoscope. So.
All right. Katie Seal with the State Historical Society of Missouri on The Place for History.